Thank you to everyone joining today here at the Tribeca Festival. Hello, New York City. I'm Corey Matthewson. I'm a lead researcher on this project. I'm from Google DeepMind. I was one of the technical directors. Joining me on stage in a different order than what I have written down is Ben Wiley, creative director, Eliza McNitt, the wonderful director, Aaron Raff, the visual effects supervisor, and Darren Aronofsky, the executive producer. So, we just watched Ancestra, a wonderful film, and then we watched the credits roll. And they were lengthy. There was a lot of people there. Some of the roles you might have seen: director, visual effects supervisor, my favorite, best boy key grip. But there's also a few that you might not have seen before. An AI unit made up of a multidisciplinary team of creative people, writers, animators, art directors, technologists, and prompt engineers. One of the goals today is to unpack what it took to make a film like this. So let's get into it. Eliza, I want to start with the sounds of the film that are still resonating through my body.
Yes. That really, I mean, that 5.1 mix sounded amazing. I really felt it through my bones. Well, I think first of all, I just want to acknowledge, as you saw the credits roll, there were 200 people who worked on this film and 20 artists, and a lot of them are in this room. So if everyone who worked on the film could please stand, we would just like to give you a round of applause and say thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Wow.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. And most importantly, I also, if you want to keep the lights back up, want to just give a shout out to the most important person here, my mom. Mom, if you want to stand up, she's really the one who did all the work.
Wow.
Wow.
We really could have gotten her a better seat.
Yeah.
I know. But yeah, I think, for me, what was so exciting about this process when I first walked in to Google, I also thought that this would be me alone at a computer, and it was absolutely not that process. And I got to work with so many incredibly talented people like Ben, John Sote, our entire team of artists who were composed that AI unit.
That's fantastic. I know the film, if it wasn't clear, sort of combined live action and generative footage. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you made the decisions about what sort of sequences would be live action, which would be generated, and how did those choices kind of come to play out?
Yeah, I think it was critical for me that humans were the heart of this story, and most importantly, that a human performance was driving this story about a mother and a child. And I think one of my boundaries there was like I have to have human actors at the center of this story, and just creatively, it really needed to have that that heart and soul. And so we had an entire live action unit. We had an entire live action shoot, and then we also had all the generated imagery that you experienced that, as I said before, really went from the edges of the cosmos to the depths of the human soul. So those were things that you just can't bring a camera into those places. And so that, especially with like animals, especially mother animals, mothers and babies, so that was really important for me to use those kinds of scenes that were really difficult to capture and really select those for the ones we use the generated video for.
Nice. We'll dig into some of those scenes and those sequences, but Ben, I want to throw to you. You sort of led the AI unit. This is a new thing, a new concept. Can you tell us a little bit about what an AI unit is?
Yeah, sure. We called it an AI unit. I don't know if that will stand long term or not, but we figured we would. Drafting off of like traditional units, you have like a New York unit, or you'd have the BCAM unit. In this case, it's the individuals who are devoted to working with the generative content, and it makes up like very much what a normal creative team would be. We have animators, art directors, writers, designers, engineers, researchers, but a lot of people who have deep backgrounds in filmmaking, and really just pulling from like all their skill sets to bend this new, fairly nascent technology into ultimately like accomplishing Eliza's vision as a director.
Nice. Now, in terms of bending that vision, can you talk a little bit about the models? I know we have some stuff that we can show.
I'll let you look at this for a second, and I'll just wax, and then I'll talk about what you're actually looking at. The way I like to think of, we all talk about prompting, and I guess if like we're all on the same page, prompting is basically what you put into a model and ultimately to get something out.
So I'm sort of prompting you as the panel
Correct.
here.
And now I am generating a response.
Clear as ice.
In this case, it's generative video, but I think like when we look at this, like it's like any shot, like the amount of micro decisions that are in a single shot on a set. You have lighting, you have the props, the set design. Every single decision in this case needs to be condensed into about 200 words, which is extremely frustrating, extremely hard. But when you put a lot of really creative people together, they find really interesting ways to accomplish such a problem. And in this case, one of our creative leads here, John, started researching microscopes. What kind of microscopes would yield such a interesting image? And Eliza actually challenged us with like, okay, can we show space in a novel way? VO is incredible at showing space in the way that you'd want to show space. It looks like Hubble photography, and it looks very real and excellent. But how could you do that in a novel way? You rely on the same kind of skills you would have as a normal filmmaker. So we took a page out of Darren's book and did like practical photography approaches, and John researched like something like 100 different microscopes and landed on this, which is that top piece there, the Brewster angle microscope. And that's just a literal thing. And then there's a lot of poetry that falls into these things as well, as you can see at the end there, where it actually says, molecular silence. And for some reason, that actually gets you into this dark void that you see at the center. So that's all to say. That's just from text. You can prompt with imagery, and we'll show you a couple more examples of all kinds of other ways you can do this. But yeah, it's a new novel way of working with the machines.
I like it. Talking about taking a page out of Darren's book, Darren, I want to turn to you. You've incorporated montage and scientific photography, detailed scientific photography, and from Pi to Requiem for a Dream to The Fountain to Postcard from Earth. How do you think this new form of image making sort of impacts cinema?
I don't know really how to start to attack that, because I think it's what like a prompt like that is showing is creating something super unexpected, but taking a long time to sort of focus in on how to get it. So, I mean, the result of that is that I think your imagination is just going to be free to really chase after more and more and different things. So I have faith that, actually I was going to say faith in chaos, which was the tagline of Pi, but there is something about that in these huge models, there's just so much to discover and find, which is kind of one of the early things of starting to work with you guys and Google DeepMind was like, basically they really do not know what the models do. They really don't have any clue. They train these things and then they're sort of prodding it, and then they're kind of, it does that too. I think that's sort of true, right?
That's totally fair to say.
That's kind of fair to say. So that's exciting, because it's like, what it means, and where I think a place for Primordial Soup is like, there's lots of ways to use these models. I'm mostly interested in figuring out how to use these models to tell stories. And so trying to help build the things that prod these models to create things that help storytellers is what I'm interested in. So that's kind of start to think about.
And what I saw watching these guys work from more of the outsider, I came from like the film world, and a lot of these tools were unfamiliar, and I jumped in watching them work, the AI unit. Like Darren was saying, there's lots to discover, and I think that they were sorting through all of these unexpected, surprising things, but the fact that it was a team of like filmmakers and artists that were gathered and all like triaging and watching it and making decisions together, it's sort of like, even though there was a lot to sort through, it was a constant like hewing it to what Eliza had in mind, like, no, this doesn't fit the story. So it was like a constant culling and selection process led by Eliza and the team. So it's like you would be lost in that without the sort of like, artistic eyes assembled with like a specific vision in mind.
And I feel like creative people are probably some of the best people set up to wrangle these things. And that actually reminds me of my next slide here, if I can go, if it works. But like this, for instance, like being surprised by what comes with the model is one thing, but then being able to take the ingredients that come out and composite it into something like this, which is made up of 15 different generations, an animator on our team compiled them together. That's being able to like not only look at the kind of components you have to play with, but then able to generate more, warp them, time warp them, everything into actually getting this full-on sequence here.
So yeah, just to reiterate and hit that point again, you're saying that this is 15 different outputs from the model composed together by visual effects experts in different ways to make the shot that actually sort of serves the vision.
Correct.
It's similar to, there was a big mandate on the fountain not to use visual effects because at the time, I guess we were in the like 2004 or so, visual effects just really quickly dated. So I went back to chemical reactions and found a guy in Oxfordshire that shot chemical reactions through a microscope. And we shot them with 35 millimeter, and then we were early digitally scanning them, and then we were manipulating them to create kind of space celestial sequences. The difference is instead of shooting underneath a microscope, we're prompting the machines to sort of create all these images, and then we're continuing to manipulate them in different ways.
Yeah, that sort of resonates with something, Eliza, that you've said a few times on this, which is that these sort of models are lenses that you can look at the world through. I wonder if you want to talk a little bit about that and how it changes your perspective of the world.
Yeah, well, I think Ben's being really nice when he talks about the way space looked. That was very important for us to enhance and, just make it different and more interesting and unexpected. And in our earliest discoveries, something that was incredible, one of the artists, came up with this beautiful idea of what if you presented space through the lens of a CAT scan, and the model was able to just, immediately do that. And that's something that, the physics of it would be really difficult to do otherwise. So I was just really impressed by the model's ability to create these images that, it would take forever to try to make those intricate microscopy of coral and the hundreds of holes that you experience. That would be so difficult to make. And so that was something I just was really blown away by, was being able to have this vision and kind of not be stopped by the limits of technology, but rather be able to create anything that I could imagine.
Nice. So, okay, let's talk babies, right?
Okay,
it's a movie
let's
about
talk
babies. Eliza, I want you to tell us a little bit what it was like to work with that baby on set.
So that baby is me. And that was not a real baby. In fact, it was not present on set. That is a generated baby. So it began with my baby photos that you can see here that my father took of me the moment I was born. And from there, we began to train the model on my photos and create images of me. And I do think that the camera added a few pounds to me as a baby, but it was pretty incredible. And we went through a whole process with Ben where I was auditioning babies and kind of figuring out what looked the most like me. And that's the baby you see in the film. Is
your long hair helped.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, it was really amazing to go through that process because I felt, and I mean, Darren, you can speak to this. What is it like to shoot with babies on set?
Well, beyond the difficulties, the ethics of it are really questionable because it's not like the baby's making the choice. What's wild to me is that how the in utero stuff, how it was able to imagine that. Because it's not like there's many cameras kind of getting that type of distance and that type of focus to create that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to allude or to connect back to what you were saying, this is something that was discovered in the model, right? It's not something that we had designed the model to do, but it's a space in the output, in the output space that you can sort of find this baby that resonates creatively.
Yeah, I mean, the baby in utero was a very hard process. And later talking to Aaron, which I'd love to hear Aaron speak about, but even capturing that without generative AI also seemed like it would be a painstaking process. But it's not only the baby, but it's coming off of the single shot of going down and then revealing it and continuing that lighting, the like milky kind of haze that we have in the womb, the really intimate moments there. The team really wrestled with that. Like, how do you actually do that? And we'll show you in a bit, but all the way through to the C-section, which actually is first modeled, a 3D model, and then actually using video to video and basically kind of retexturizing, or we had to say reskinning that model to then map this and ultimately achieve the look you saw.
Sort of a weird word, reskinning.
Yeah, my apologies.
No, just my skin just started to crawl. It was a reskinning. So Aaron, can you tell us a little bit about how this sort of process differs from the sort of traditional VFX sort of filmmaking processes?
Yeah, sure. Well, I can talk about the scenes after the baby's giving birth, and then we see the baby in the hospital. So that looks more like these. This was sort of the development of the look of how that baby would look.
I think this was like your second day with us, Aaron, when we did this one, right?
Yeah,
After we terrified you.
The speed is what's really different. So I walked in, and like on the first day, they were talking about the live action shoot with the actors, and that was really appealing to me. And then Liza said that we would want to see the baby like lying on the mother, so we know we'd have a human actor with like the AI or like synthetic baby. And that's traditionally you would do that. You would model it in CG and use traditional VFX tools to do it, and doing like a live organic baby is hard. You've seen bad versions of that, and it's difficult to do. And then the speed on this project was really fast. So on the second day, I was like, that's going to be the hardest thing to pull off. So I took out my camera and filmed Eliza like on the couch at Google here, and asked these guys to help me like prompt the baby and just see what would come out of the box right away. So like this was the first thing that came out almost instantly. Obviously, it doesn't look like a newborn, and it's maybe moving in a way that's unrealistic. But just the realism of that with no effort I was like, we're dealing with totally new challenges here. Some things that were hard are going to be easy, and then some things that were easier to control before are now going to be unpredictable. So it was sort of like figuring out where we're going to get into trouble and where we're not. We did more tests like this, and then ultimately like that informed our strategy when we went on set, like telling Audrey how to best position her hand. And I think what we found is that we did it a few different ways, because we had a live baby prop on set to help Audrey move
A doll
around.
covered in glycerin. It was disgusting.
That
Yes.
looked crazy and was maybe distracting, but it helped to frame the shots and get the DP to know where to point the camera and have Audrey help her with the emotion. This particular shot worked better when we didn't have the doll there because it was too big and blocking her. So I guess what you're seeing here is sort of a mix. The AI tool generated the baby, which right out of the box looked crazy real with the hair and all that, the way that Audrey's body sort of moving as she breathes and laughs and the baby moves with it. Those are all things that are like really hard and would be painstaking to do with the methods that I'm used to. So all that stuff came free out of the box. And then it was just, I focused my efforts on lining things up or changing things a little bit on top.
I've seen probably 100 versions of this, and some of them don't have babies. Some of them have rubber ducks or kittens or puppies. This is sort of a more general process that could be used in the future. How are you sort of imagining this sort of workflow translating to other challenges?
Yeah, my head's been reeling a lot since that day. But I mean, like, there's there's two things. One is all the like wholesale AI imagery where it takes up the whole screen and it just makes your jaw drop and it's crazy. And you need to, to do it tastefully and compellingly. I think you need to gather filmmakers and artists to like focus it and make it look good and turn it into a compelling project, which we saw tonight. And then the other thing that I'm looking at is like, there's all kinds of other films that are not like full trippy visual things. There's just regular kinds of movies. And as we know, like these days, everything needs digital help, which is where I come in. So I'm just thinking about, this is a good example. Like, how can we use these tools to, do the kind of filmmaking that we love in a wider swath of filmmaking, it maybe with like the more invisible touch or like the more subtle touch, which is, you want to see both things. So that's one track that I'm thinking about.
Yeah. Darren, did you want to add to that and how it might change your process in working with babies in the future?
I think there's so many branches about to happen in filmmaking. As far as like traditional filmmaking, we've been relying on digital tools for so long. I kind of compare like films in the 70s and 80s, they would film for 145 days. So if like you saw a C-stand or something, or that night when you watched the dailies, it didn't quite work, you could go back and do it. We now shoot movies 30 to 50 days in general, and the reason we can do that is because of what we can do digitally. So there's just been this constant evolution of filmmaking that we can't lose sight of, and that this is definitely going to shift how what type of jobs there are on set and off set. But there's just there's so many tools that will allow us to continue doing what we do, and there's going to be a lot of people who are going to have to man those tools to make it happen. But I think what it will do is like it will definitely make incredible efficiencies in probably how we work on set, in the same way that digital has allowed. Constantly, like there's always things that you're not quite getting when you're on set, be it like a wig fix, meaning like there's something about a wig that is a problem that you're going to have to fix later, to something huge, which is like replacing all the cars and putting in the right period cars, or getting rid of the McDonald's sign because you don't have it cleared. Now there's just more opportunities for us filmmakers when we're on set to be like, I can do all different types of things with what I'm shooting right here. So I don't know. I think it's opening up the imagination in lots of different ways.
Cool. Ben, did you want to jump?
Yeah, I was just gonna jump in on, like, we had one shoot day on this shoot, and we optimized that shoot to have coverage, basically to make sure that we could generate stuff that was consistent if we needed it. Eliza had a vision for this opening oneer, but we didn't know, maybe we were gonna wanna cut away to the gurney wheel rolling. So Aaron and I would fly in after Eliza had been in there, and we'd get coverage that we knew we could generate off of. And I could see that very shortly, that's gonna be the same way you shoot plates for VFX. You're gonna shoot with the idea of, okay, how can we actually like make sure we get coverage that we can then generate? And I remember you said something really profound to me. You said, well, this is great. Like, I have one day and I can spend the majority of my time with Audrey focusing on the performance. And then I can really think about, okay, what other kind of coverage will I need later? So I can optimize the humans in this moment and really focus on that. And that always stuck with me.
Yeah, I mean, it made me think of, we just saw the 25th anniversary of Requiem, and just like all the, hard cuts that you do. I was like, okay, would you have generated those?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I don't think the model can generate drugs, though. That's
exactly. Yeah, I don't know. It's changing so quick. It's like I just shot a movie less than a year ago, and there's definitely things I would do differently now. That's how quick it's become. You agree, right?
Sorry?
You agree, right?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm thinking of, I'm trying to think of what the answer to Eliza's question in your head. It's like, what I'm going to speak for you. It's like you wanted to do something that was new and that would like blow people's minds. So I think to do that, now I think the bar for blowing people's minds, I think that's another thing that we're reeling with, because, our minds are being blown constantly with this stuff, and I think that people are going to be trying to use these things to blow each other's minds, and so I think that there's still you can still use creativity and taste to do that. So
yeah. We talk a bunch about this when we talk about Primordial Soup, the company, because our kind of make-believe motto is make soup, not slop, and when you hear the word slop, you think just like really crappy stuff. But the reality is, stuff coming out of these models is the slop is just mind-blowing, in the sense that you're like, whoa, I've never seen that before. Even the early Will Smith eating the spaghetti was like, whoa, that's cool. And we all watched it 3 or 4 times. But none of it stays with you. It gets your attention for a second, and it really works well on the socials, and you can spend hours doing it. But what was missing for me is like, why wasn't it impacting you? Like, your mind is blown, but it doesn't really stay with you. And and that's because there's no stories, there's no emotions to it. And so I think that's the kind of mission that I have with working with this technology, is like, how do we use these tools that are making these incredible images to keep, up to pace with all the slop coming out, to get people's attention, because I think a story is much more effective than just really wild images.
Yeah. Eliza, I want to hear from you on that point, but specifically around like how you maintain this sense of adaptability as a director who's so forward-thinking and so adaptable, and so ready to adopt the new technology while still being true to the sort of story that you're telling.
Yeah, I think just off of all of that, again, like when I sat down for the first day and I saw what you, the team at Google had, generated, my mind was blown. And it was just, you could really create anything. And I think that's what, and I came in with a lot of ideas, but nothing super specific. And I think that was when I realized that what would be most impactful for me to explore was a very deeply personal story. And, we were talking about, I've always loved black holes and the universe. And so I think immediately I, had this thought of like, oh, what if it's a story about like this black hole that was in my heart when I was born, and, my mom bringing me into the universe, and how could I take something that's like so intimate and so human, so personal to me, but make it this much bigger story that goes from the infinite to the infinitesimal and really conveys like the power of a mother's love on a cosmic scale. And, there really is no force in the universe like that, especially my own mother's. But yeah, I think that's what really struck me, was like, okay, I could do anything, but what do I want to say that I've never had the opportunity to say that could be a really personal story that I would have never had the chance to do before this.
Nice. One of the ambitious shots that I'll just set up here, because I think we have some content on it, is the sort of oneer shot that goes into the head and then travels through the body. Yeah. I've learned this term, oneer, this film term. And so can you talk a little bit about how you achieved the control of the camera on that?
I mean, maybe before that, can you maybe describe your vision? Because it started with you having a vision and then us being like, okay, well, how are we going to do that?
Yes, I had a vision. I wanted this oneer. I wanted us to, start with, on Audrey in the real world. Because this is what happened to my mom, is a camera flew into her body. She went into the hospital for a routine checkup, and they said exactly that. They said, emergency C-section. And so I wanted to create that sense of, chaos around her. And so, it was really like the vision came from the script and from the story, and wanting to have that moment continue through Audrey's brain into her lungs, down to see her heart, and then down into her womb. And I felt like I don't think I've ever really seen that before. And so that was the challenge that I gave to our team. And I will say it began with generating a lot of nightmares. And then, the process began. And I think that's, when Ben and John and the team, really had to like take that challenge and run with it.
Yeah, right. I think when you pull the scenes back on a one shot, a live action one shot, it's like the most choreographed scene ever. Like, not only do you have to have like blocking of like the actor and all that, but you're moving the camera, man, and they have someone behind them making sure they're moving, they're pulling focus at different times. Like, there's a lot of factors at play. So trying to generate that was like very intimidating. We have 8 seconds. She wants to continue off like a 45-second opening with another 45-second oneer. So how do we stitch together 8-second generations? And the team came up with the idea of like, well, we're gonna actually just model the human body, and we will basically create a pre-visualization flying through that. And then ultimately, yes, to be consistent with the look that Eliza had set out. But this is kind of what that looks like. This is actually like the fly-through of the 3D model. I don't know if Martin is in the audience, but shout out to Martin, who modeled this.
Shout out to Martin. He painted that in virtual reality.
And then there's a lot of like, yes, he did. Yeah, he not only did he decide to 3D model it, but he did it in VR. And then there's pre-vising, and then there's actually like layering it on top of that. And the team and Donica actually showed me this map where she had plotted, just like you would one or on like a live action set. She had plotted like, here's our points, here's our tracking blocks. This is 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we basically ended up with like 6 8-second generations. They're all somewhat consistent, but to truly like blend them comes back to like traditional VFX and actually like seamlessly stitching them together, so what you saw today feels like a one fluid motion right out of the live action footage.
Totally. Aaron, I want to ask you about seamlessly stitching them together, but first, can you just double down on that? What does it mean that he did it in VR?
Oh, sure.
He made a model, a 3D model of the human body.
Yes.
And then...
Yes, Martin is a wizard who uses VR handles like you would a computer mouse.
To be clear, Martin is a real human person.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that knows magic. But yeah, he fully built from scratch, like literally modeling. In VR, it allows him to like go around it and exist kind of in a full 3D space. And then as you can see, like with this dive down, how visceral it is to actually be there. It's like he is the camera in that way.
So like part of the reason that they did it this way is like this scene has really specific camera choreography. So and like Eliza, when it would maybe be too complex at this point to like text prompt it to do that choreography. So and Eliza really wanted to have control over when it turns and which parts of the bodies it hits and stuff like that. So that's why when they're talking about VR, they modeled the whole body and then he'd use like regular keyframe animation to do it. And then we had lots of control over that. And then once that was done, they fed it, and that's what the reskinning is. And when it's in VO, would then reference that video of the 3D render that had all the camera that Eliza liked and would generate off that, as opposed to doing all the camera work in VO, which I suppose at this point doesn't give you that fine-grained control. So it's like mixing different disciplines to make sure you're not just like taking whatever the machine was giving you. It's like they found a way that they could have control over the camera at this point, and then sort of like spoon-fed that or like tied that into VO.
Nice. Aaron, just to ask the same question that I asked in the previous visual effects technique, can you talk a little bit about when this same workflow might be useful in the future? Like that same what we described is really, that's like familiar to me because we have like in traditional VFX you have animators that would do a previs, and then you want to lock that down, you want to iterate on that with the director so that you can and drop it in the edit and feel like, okay, that looks good before you take it into production, which in VFX is like adding all the time consuming look stuff. So that sort of workflow is cool, and it's like I want to, as a VFX person, you're used to having like granular control over all these things. So it's like when any tool that I can see with these things that gives that back to the filmmakers, it's really like exciting, and you want to hold on to that. So I love how Martin did this stuff. When I came in for a sequence like this, I barely touched it. It was all these like amazing AI animators and the AI unit, but like it generates it in 8-second chunks at this point. So you need and to seamlessly have that play out for 45 seconds or something. It's like what you would do in editorial. Like Eric, the editor, which also a huge part of this is he would lay this out and then be like, this is where I want them to transition and stuff, and then I would take that into my traditional VFX compositing software and like add in little animated bits so that you hide the seams and make it feel like one piece. So that I was kind of just putting a little layer of icing on their cake. Eliza, you were going to...
Oh, yeah. No, I was going to say, what was really exciting about the generative video and the live action was it really had to be this conversation between them with a cohesive look. And that was something that I really worked with my amazing cinematographer, Minka, on developing. And, to be able to like create that first seamless shot that, I think we did like 13 takes of, and then have that be something that, would then go into and set the tone for the rest of the film was super important. So it was really like, I think it was very much setting that look and feel from, the live action, and then bringing that into the rest of the images that we generated was really important.
Nice, that match. In terms of the feel, do you want to talk at all about the audio, the composing, the mixing, any of the sounds that we heard?
Absolutely. I mean, the incredible score was composed by Ringdown, which is Caroline Shaw and Danny Lee. And this, heard their work for years and wanted to, collaborate with them, and just had like the most incredible, really like visceral sounds. And it was such an amazing collaboration to work with them, because we just spoke in like emotions, and that was, I think, just really special. And they totally understood the images. They began composing before we really had anything. The soundscape is so incredible, done by Drazen and everyone at Q Department. And yeah, I felt it in like every beat. I felt one of the most amazing moments of that was, so my mom wrote a children's album, and on one of the songs is me crying, and crying and also laughing and giggling. And so they used a AI software to actually extract my voice, and so my voice is the voice of the baby in the film as well. So it's just like those little touches that you just like I never knew were possible. And also what Drazen was so thoughtful, and also invited my mother and I to come to the studio, and we recorded our heartbeats, and also recorded my stomach like grumbling, and my mom, and it's actually the sounds of the interior of my mom's body and her heart that you hear rumbling in the very beginning. So it's just, I thought like every element was very, very thoughtful, and just really about like how do we bring this like the body into a world that feels really cosmic.
Nice. It makes for such a cohesive vibe when you're feeling it. Aaron, this was the first film you made with generative AI. What are you most excited for in the next project or the next few projects you work on?
I sort of talked about it before. I just want to bring in, I have this like past of using all the other tools that I use, so I really want to I'm looking for ways to like inject all the strong stuff that I'm getting from VO, and like making what I can do go faster and not throw away everything. But I don't know. We're going to have to see how that works out.
Eliza, how are you going to sort of integrate sort of research tools or workflows like this into your broader process as a director, as a filmmaker?
Well, I think, one of the amazing parts about this is I was able to do like a month's worth of research in a week because of Gemini and because of the tools I had access to. I was able to really like pre-visualize the entire film and communicate that with Ben and John and the entire team. And I was able to really like solidify my vision and be able to like have that before we even got on set. Because of the ability to use those tools. I still worked with a traditional storyboard artist, and still worked with, it's really important for me to have those folks at every, in the process at every step. But I felt I was just able to be a better director and a better communicator because I was able to have a really clear idea of what I wanted, because I got to play first with the tools.
Nice. Darren, what advice do you have for the future filmmakers, the curious, the skeptical in the audience?
They're very open-ended questions.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, what's the number that comes after 17?
Yeah, I think it's a really exciting moment. I know if I was making Pi, my first film, it would be 5 people in a room just exploring and seeing what we could make with this. I think it's really exciting because I think it's going to change what me, Aaron, and Eliza do with traditional film. But I think there's also going to be a new way that films are made, which is kind of related to the flow idea that Google DeepMind's talking about, which is some type of collaboration with the machine, which will be something different and new that I'm excited about. I think I just think there's so much opportunity to like be an inventor right now with this stuff and to really push. And we're just going to all be very surprised in how it's going to change things. I think Aaron's a perfect example. You came in as like kicking and screaming until day 2 when you saw that in a certain way. Because I think the tools are really powerful, but I don't think they're gonna like take us away from being storytelling. Demis always points out to me that more people are playing chess now, even though they can't beat a computer. so I don't think it stops us from making stories. It's just we're going to start making them in different ways with different types of titles and different types of jobs.
Absolutely. And tonight, thanks to Eliza and thanks to the 200 and some people that worked on this film, we did see what is possible now with these tools as they're used by expert storytellers. Ancestra is a reminder of what's possible when we can collaborate as the artists help to make these tools useful, and we want to stay deeply rooted in that human craftsmanship and that human storytelling, and the criticality of that. Ben, I want to throw to you. What's the biggest surprise that you've had?
18.
That's good. Not to put you on the spot.
No, that's good. I would actually say the most profound moment for me probably in this whole project was watching Audrey's performance for 2.5 hours where she basically was able to cry to nothing in her hand, and I was just watching it on a monitor, and I had no idea how a human could pull out that emotion time and time again in a way that like never lost me. And I knew what she was doing. I was behind the scenes, and the power of your talent was unbelievable. And I had never quite seen anything like that. So that's probably one of the most profound moments on the project for me.
Nice. Thank you so much, Audrey, the actor. Thank you so much, Audrey, the mother. Thank you to Darren, to Aaron, to Eliza, to Ben. I'm Corey. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Corey.